Hi, you guys. Thanks for joining me today for Yin Yoga. We'll just take a few moments in a seated position here. Close the eyes. Let's take a little bit of time to check in. We'll talk about what Yin is and the functional purpose of it as we move through the first couple of poses. Begin to notice how the body moves as you breathe. So without a checklist of right or wrong, just simply observing, acting more as a witness. So we take an average of 23,000 breaths per day. And how many of those go unnoticed? So as you breathe, allow the ribs to expand out to the sides. Allow the diaphragm to drop down into the belly. And we'll keep this simple observation of the breath as we move through the practice. So for me, as in a yin practice, it's not really about how deep you can get into a shape, but how effectively can you observe the breath and how the body moves. With each breath, the ribs expand out to the sides, creates a little bit of movement in the thoracic spine. So you've got 23,000 opportunities a day to increase the suppleness in your thoracic spine, in the diaphragm. So keep this awareness with you, and we're going to start in child's pose. Yin Yoga is a very easy practice to daydream in. And I invite you to allow the mind to wander today. I'll do all the work for you. So Yin is based on a couple of different principles. One is the traditional Chinese medicine system of the meridians. So these are the energy channels that run through the body that are associated to any particular system or organ function. So as we're in shapes, we are lengthening some meridians, compressing others, stimulating them, and allowing that qi or prana to flow more freely through us. And reach out through the fingertips and walk the hands on over to the right side. It's also a practice that allows us to get into the joints and connective tissue. In a yang practice, we keep the muscles active. Anything that heats up the body and creates sweat would be considered a yang practice. And in a yin practice, you want to keep the muscles relaxed and create just the right amount of stress on the joints. Walk the hands back to center and on over to the other side. Lots of length on one side, lots of compression. And then that
simple observation of the breath.
The minute you start to change the breath and put more effort into it, it switches everything into a yang practice right away. So a nice calm breath. And then go ahead and slowly come on down. You can turn the head to the other side. We'll take a couple of breaths here between rounds. Nice work, yogis. Bring the gaze back to center. We'll do this for the second time. And if you feel that compression, try to take the feet even a little bit wider. Notice if you're gripping or holding anywhere. Just let the breath kind of wash up onto the shores of wherever it is that you're holding. Come on down. Take a couple of breaths here. And then we'll do that last round, yogis. Bring the gaze forward, and then any version that you're in is great. And come on down. Nice work, yogis. And scoot the feet a little bit closer together. Lift the hips and sink them back to the heels in child's pose just for a couple of breaths here. And bring the torso up. So I'm going to give you some options for this next position we're going to get into, camel. So if you are already comfortable coming into this, we're going to do this shape also 3 times, 1 minute each time, okay? So if you are okay to come into it, reach back for the heels. On the tops of the feet, go for it. If you'd rather tuck the toes for a little less distance to travel, go for it. Make sure you reach back with both hands at the same time. And also, and then if you have two blocks, then you can bring the blocks back. It's going to give you a little, even less distance to travel. And if all of that sucks for whatever reason, bring the hands to the low back and focus on squeezing the elbows together behind you, all right? So the emphasis isn't really on shoving the hips forward, but getting that length across the upper part of the chest and also that movement in the thoracic spine, okay? Let's go for it. And slowly bring the torso up, and just have a seat on the heels here for a couple of breaths. Okay, so we're going to do that 2 more times. This might feel like really dynamic, but if you look at the symbol of yin and yang, in each little one there are those dots. So the most yang has a little bit of yin, and the most yin has a little bit of yang. So that's our little bit of this dynamic yang experience today. So let's go ahead and come into that second round. And slowly bring the torso up, yogis. Sit on the heels. Take a couple of breaths here. We're going to do that one last time, okay? So any version. So you can grab your block on its mid-height side, yogis, and then lift the hips and scoot the block down so that it's near the tailbone or the sit bone. So if you have it too high and you're kind of like that, move it further down so that you can kind of get that same action in the pelvis that we had if you were in saddle, right? So you can take the feet a little bit wider if you feel that compression on the low back. What helps me is to kind of pull my shoulder blades together a little bit to keep me in this spot. And so this is awesome. Okay, so wherever you are, this is what's happening. And come back to the awareness of the breath here. Just let the breath flow naturally. And let the mind wander. And we start getting into the joints and lengthening the energy channels and compressing them. There are maybe memories that come up or ideas or something, remember where it is that you couldn't find, or even a solution, a sudden aha moment to a question or a problem that you've been thinking about. Just allowing the mind to wander and daydream. This is when we consolidate our learning. This is when things can be revealed to you. If you are in a half version, go ahead and switch sides. If you have the block under you or both feet, we're going to hang out here for a few more minutes. And let gravity do more of the work. Okay, Okies, if you have the block underneath the hips, go ahead and flip it onto its flat side. If you have the feet under you, go ahead and slowly bring one foot out at a time. If you've got a bolster, you can kind of roll off of that, scoot it over to one side. And we're all just going to meet up right here on the back, the knees bent, and take the feet about hip width apart. We'll just take a couple of breaths here. This neutral spine and pelvis. And you can start to take the feet a little bit wider, drop the knees in toward each other. So we've done a lot of external rotation here in that shape, so now you get this internal rotation up in the hip joint. Should feel pretty good right about now. And you bring the knees to the chest, give the knees a squeeze. And bring the knees on over to that right side. We'll come into a twist here. So any leg variation, you can keep the knees together like this, or wrap that top leg around the bottom leg. Any preference you have for this twist. If you have the knees up close to the shoulder, it's going to move that twist up into the upper part, that thoracic spine, and up into the shoulders and the neck. If you move the knees away from you, it's going to move that twist down into the mid and lower part of the spine and the hips. Totally up to you what feels best for you right now. Notice how the body moves as you breathe in this position. And if the mind is wandering, it just takes one moment of observing the breath to bring you right back into this very moment. Right back into this physical vehicle that you got this time around. This vehicle taking you on this journey. And last few breaths here. Start to bring the knees back to center. Level out the hips and the shoulders. I'll take that twist on over to the other side. And last few breaths here. All right, yogis, start to bring the knees back to center. Level out the hips and the shoulders. And then bring the knees to the chest, and you can start to rock up and down the spine a few times. Really notice any flat spots and try to smooth them out. Okay. Just pretend that I did it. You guys do it better than I did, okay? About 4 or 5 rocks. Ouchie. Nice. And then roll all the way up. And we're going to meet up on the belly. All right. So we're going to come into another twist here on the belly. Take the arms out to the side. We'll start with that right arm out to the side and then step back behind you with the left foot. So if your neck's a little uncomfortable here, you can tuck a block under the head, or if you're okay here. So I'd like for you to have the palm facing down. So you've got external rotation. Some people like to reach back and clasp their hands behind the back, but it creates internal rotation. And I want you to open up that shoulder girdle a little bit more here.
So there's a little bit of that good stress on the shoulder joint, lots of extension in the heart and lung meridian.
Notice how the body moves as you breathe here. Okay, start to slowly roll onto the belly. Turn the head to the other direction. We'll take a couple of breaths before we get into this on the other side, okay? And take that left arm out to the side. Start to step back behind you.
And last few breaths here. And slowly start to roll onto the belly. Turn the head to the other side. Just give that neck a little bit of release. And bring the hands alongside the rib cage. Lift the hips and sink them back to the heels in child's pose. And take the knees a little bit wider than you normally have them here. Bring the awareness back to the breath. And take a deep inhale. Reach out through the fingertips. We're going to tuck the toes and lift up to down dog, just for a couple of breaths here. So nothing too serious. Move in whatever way feels natural for you. And start to walk the hands and the feet to meet up in the middle of the mat here. Keep the feet about hip width apart, maybe a little bit wider. You can bend the knees and cross the arms. And let the belly rest on the thighs. And let the neck relax. So really focus on letting gravity do more of the work here. It's really nice work for the spine. It's inversion, let gravity pull on it in a different direction. And if all you feel is tight on the backs of the legs, bend the knees a little bit. And so we want to move that awareness away from stretching muscles. And notice where you're gripping, even here in this position. And about halfway there. Nice work, yogis. So we're going to come right into a squat from here. So for me, I like to turn my toes out a little bit. I think my feet are the right distance, at hip width apart, and then turn the toes out. So when you sink down, you can use the elbows to kind of push the knees away, maybe, or maybe not. If you're up here, then shove something under the heels, like blocks, or roll up a blanket or a towel or something, so that you're not trying to balance on the toes. You can put all of the weight into the heels, okay? And if you have trouble with this position, squatting is kind of a lost art in the West. So just send me a photo or video of what you're doing, and then I can give you better tips. This is probably one of the most challenging ones to do work with you virtually on. So just let me know and I'll help you out, okay? And just sink a little bit deeper. We'll stay here for about 1 more minute. All right, yogis, if you have blocks or anything under the heels, go ahead and move those out from underneath you. We'll just meet up right here on our buns and straighten the legs. Bounce the knees a little bit. Rock the legs side to side. Just let all of that go. And keep the feet about hip width apart. We'll come into a forward fold. So this is just like what we were doing standing. If you bent your knees in the standing version in order to get a bit more freedom in this position, then do the same thing here. And you can tuck maybe a bolster or a pillow or blocks under the knees so that you don't have to work to keep them bent. Come as far forward as you can with a nice long spine. And then let the head hang. You can let the back round a little bit, and you can always rest your head on a block if you like. And kind of everything we've done so far has prepared us for this final pose before Shavasana. So we're going to stay here for a while. Just kind of settle in and do your best to stay in this without fidgeting. Just that perfect level of discomfort. apologize if all you hear is my stomach. Stay with it, yogis. About 1 more minute. Okay, yogis, use the hands to start to slowly walk the torso up to vertical. Take the hands back behind you. Get some length along the front of the body. And then pick the knees up. We'll give the knees a hug here. And bounce the knees, rock the legs side to side. Just let all of that go. And then start to slowly roll onto the back. And make your way to Shavasana. Take the feet and arms a little bit wider than you normally would for Shavasana. Create physical vulnerability. And let that vulnerability find its way into your heart, into your relationships. Take a deep inhale. Relax the jaw,
Let the tongue drop from the roof of the mouth. Smooth out that little space between the eyebrows. And let gravity take over. And slowly begin to bring the awareness back into the room. And back into the body. Notice the air moving in and out through the nose. And maybe you feel a breeze brush across the skin. A breeze of Shakti that's all around you and all in you. Begin to move fingers and toes as if for the very first time. And circle the ankles and wrists deeply. And roll the arms and legs in and out. And turn the head to one side and then the other. And take a big stretch up overhead, yogis. And stretch in whatever way feels natural for you. Hug the knees to the chest and roll all the way over onto your left side. And come on up to a seated position. Keep the eyes closed. And bring your hands together at your heart center in Anjali Mudra, where we connect our everyday self with our infinite self. All that is in me bows to all that is in you. And we are all one. Namaste. Thank you for the privilege. As always, Waheguru and fearlessness and mercy at all times. Don't you forget it. If you have questions, take a vinyasa at gmail.com and I'll help you out with whatever you need. All right?